Hello, everybody. We're just going to jump right into it. This is our government unit, only a quarter. Please keep in mind that a government class where we are at typically takes an entire semester. So we need to make this short and sweet. Actually, it's at less than a quarter with the time that we spent on imperialism. All right, so government, what is it? Why we need it? A lot of people like to look at it as the factory. This is how policies are made. This is how affairs of state with other states are conducted. Actions are binding on its citizens. So, whatever policies that are created, of course, these policies are related to the citizens themselves. Politics, this would be the process. Uh, who gets what, when, how. All right, so how do we actually get healthcare, for example, welfare? There's a lot of things that are out there that the government does do for us. Lastly, for this little bit, public policy. This is the product itself. You know, what are the actual rules that we must abide by as citizens? Also, what are the priorities of our government? You know, in the past, we discussed government is there for mutual protection. We talked about this very, very early in the year. So, what are the priorities? You know, we have a finite amount of resources. You know, how are we going to use these resources as efficiently and effectively as possible? So, we have to prioritize. You know, everybody can't get everything. Now, we do have different types of governments. I don't want to keep it relegated just to these. There are different ways of looking at things as far as what kind of governments are out there. We'll talk about this in history uh, definitely next year. We're getting to the close of this year, so we're not going to go too much in depth of those other types. So monarchy, I think you guys are pretty clear with what a monarchy is. King, queen. They have this huge amount of power invested in one person, typically hereditary, and that hereditary line sometimes meanders a little bit, but for the most part, it is hereditary. Totalitarianism. So this is where the government itself is controlling the economy and pretty much everything. People are there to serve the state. Uh, the state isn't there to serve the people. Now that's a big flip flop in comparison what we're used to as Americans. Okay, the government is here for us. Okay, the in a totalitarian regime, the people are there to serve the government. Okay, so big difference. Oligarchy. This is where the power is vested in just a few people. So possession of wealth, social status, military position, or achievement is relegated to a few amount of people. Democracy. This is where we have people giving their opinions, voting, representation for the most part in large countries is necessary just because of the sheer amount of people. Classical democracy, yeah, I mean that doesn't really work too well because the amount of people that we see today. So when we talk about a classical or a direct democracy, this is pretty much non-existent because of the huge populations that we see around the globe. It's like saying one person is going to vote for the president of the United States. Well, we don't do that here in this country. We do have the Electoral College. If we look at Great Britain, for example, they have the Parliament, which represents the people. Two different sections of the Parliament, just like us, we have two different sections of our legislature. It's more of it is a representative form of democracy or a true democracy. Okay. Common themes and concepts. So these are economic systems that countries utilize. For us, it's capitalism. This is our bread and butter, if you will. Not that we have absolute capitalism. We do have instances of social programs within our own country that some people like to ignore that we've been using for a long time already. But capitalism, you know, investment in and ownership of the means of production, distribution, and exchange of wealth is made by private individuals or in some cases corporations. So a corporation is just where a few people put their, not just a few, but it can be a lot of people, put their money together and create these large companies with large infrastructure that's needed For example, a car company, not just one person is going to take their money and make a car company. It just doesn't happen. Nobody has that much money. It takes a lot of investment by other individuals, by other companies in some cases, to create large corporations. Fascism, this is where you take business and government, or business owners and government, and tie them together. Some people refer to it as corporatism, where you have really close ties between the government and industry, the titans of industry, if you will. So, as you can imagine, the government is going to be, very favorite, have some favoritism there when it deals with corporate powers. Socialism, this is where the government themselves, or the state has a lot of ownership. Now, not in all cases. Usually, the ownership is relegated to major industries. So, for example, if we look at Mexico, there is some socialism there, as they do own all of the natural resources within Mexico, not the private businesses, but the natural resources. So, those of you who have ever traveled down to Mexico, you'll see every gas station down there. It's Pemex. It's Pemex because the government owns the natural resources, the oil. Okay, communism. This is the complete and utter elimination of private property. So we don't see private individuals or corporations in a communist system. The government owns everything. The government owns the market. The government tells you what you want, more likely what you need. Okay, so of course you should know the difference between wants and needs, and the government is going to make sure they attempt to provide for your needs, but your wants, not that important. So some things our own government does assist us with, public health programs. So, for example, a lot of diseases that have been out there, we've made a push to vaccinate. Some people, of course, are anti-vaxxers, is the colloquial term that the media has given to people who do not want to vaccinate their children. And this, of course, takes away our herd immunity. And because of that, we do see measles, for example, that's pretty much was wiped out of the United States, coming back. So not necessarily a good thing when you put the public at risk. And our government, wanted to try to make this not happen. Our interstate system, this was government funded through taxes, using our taxes to create this huge interstate system. So if you've ever driven across the country, that is the reason. Okay, because the government did come in and say, hey, for the common benefit, we should have some type of connectivity, because we do utilize cars quite often in this country. Social Security and Medicare. Social Security, of course, when you become of a retiring age and you become too old to work, not necessarily too old to work, but you've had a long life and you probably shouldn't be working anymore. For multiple reasons. Your body breaks down, your mind breaks down a little bit. It could be unsafe for certain individuals. So government set up Social Security in order to help people who don't save for themselves. We also have something called Medicare, also for our elderly. As they age, of course, medical needs become more and more necessary. Some more accomplishments: GI Bill, Student Financial Aid Program. So if you go into the military, for a certain amount of time, they will assist you with your education. So always keep that in mind as you become graduates of high school. Anti-discrimination policies, not nice to discriminate. So the government has stepped in and created laws to stop discrimination. Workplace, schools, in general, in public, for the most part. Consumer protections, clean water and air. Hey, who doesn't like clean water and air? Kind of important to live. So when I was your guys' age, for example, pretty much every single day during the summertime, the sky was like this disgusting yellow-brown. Would really hurt my lungs when I would run outside for too long. They've done some pretty good job, if you will, in cleaning up our air and in our water. Workplace safety, that would be referred to as OSHA. making sure that people have a safe environment to work. You don't want hands and arms lopped off due to some type of industrial process. Same thing with breathing in noxious fumes in certain companies. Food and drug safety. We want to make sure our food is good. We don't die from it. And of course, our military to provide for the common defense, both home and abroad. Now, the military, for the most part, does not operate in the United States, other than practicing, but we do have police executive powers in the United States, like FBI, local police departments, sheriff, state police, and then, of course, city or local police. More accomplishments. The West. So creating these huge projects in different areas of the West where people were not very populated, yet still we wanted to create connectivity to these areas very early in our history. Rural electrification. Now, you guys don't really worry too much about that because we live in a relatively large city. But if you live in, I don't know, Nowheresville, Louisiana, where not that many people live, power is ran all the way out there at the cost of taxpayers throughout the country. Okay, that's something a lot of people don't think about. But if you want to visit there, the electricity that's run there is done through your tax dollars in order to have the citizens. And then also, if you want to visit, if you want to go there on a vacation, uh, you can charge your cell phone. National Weather Service. It's pretty important to know what the weather is going to be like, particularly if you're planning a trip. But same thing if we're doing any trade outside the country. So safety of our planes, our ships. We need to know if a hurricane's coming, if tornadoes are going to be approaching the areas of our country that do get hit with tornadoes. It has been happening recently. If you've been paying attention to news, poverty policies, homeless policies, trying to assist our population that, if we look at a lot of the homeless people, they simply cannot work due to debilitating injuries or also mental injuries. Mental health has become in the forefront of late, and it's kind of interesting to see the huge explosion of homelessness, particularly in our state. Funding science research, medical, internet, cell phones, GPS, etc. Much of this is due to the government giving money to researchers in order to promote the common defense or the common welfare. So medical, obviously important, internet, cell phones, GPS. Now, a lot of these come from military. It's kind of interesting the way our we as human beings uh, advance. We look to our military. We look for better ways to kill each other, and because of that, and I'm joking here somewhat, but at the same time, I'm serious. We look at better ways to kill each other, and from that, we get all this advancement in technology. All right, roots of American culture and political culture. We have Athenian democracy, Aristotle's natural law, Roman republicanism, and then of course the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment, of course, a lot of science, math, a lot of explaining of the world around us, and that kind of trickles down to political thought. And do we need kings and queens? Or can we figure this out on ourselves? Okay, so this idea of the social contract theory, where individuals are free and equal by natural right and give their consent to be governed. So we give up some rights in order to be governed. Like we're willingly doing this because we know some people don't behave themselves. So first political philosopher, we have Hobbes. He believes humans' natural state is a state of war. We are inherently evil. Without government, life is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. So we give up some rights in order to be governed due to this. People need a strong ruler guaranteeing their rights against the weak, or rights of the weak, excuse me, against the strong. Okay. So we have John Locke. He feels that individuals are born equal and with natural rights. No king has the right to void these specific rights. Government is necessary to preserve life, liberty, and property. So we did talk about this the other day, the idea of life, liberty, and property, not happiness.